I'm telling you, I totally learned. He taught me so much, George, and I thank God for him because I learned that you don't have to have sex in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I just can't be in a relationship unless there's some sex involved. But you'd be surprised when you turn into a caregiver um, role in a romantic relationship. Yeah, that's the last thing sometimes on your mind.
Welcome back to Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast, where we honor the unseen sacrifices and soul deep resilience of caregivers everywhere. Today's episode is one that cuts straight to the heart. We're exploring a side of caregiving that's rarely talked about. What happens when the person you're caring for is also the person you love? The emotional labor, the blurred lines, the grief that starts long before goodbye. Joining us is none other than Ms Marjon Parham, a dynamic force known as the Queen of Convo. She's a seasoned media personality, award-winning communication specialist, and the founder of Mastermind Communications. With a career that spans engineering, public relations, and community empowerment. But today, Ms Marjon is here in her most human role yet as a woman who became a caregiver to her romantic partner and walked with him through to the end. This is a conversation about love, loss, and what it means to care when your heart is on the line. Let's get into it. Hello, Miss Marjon. How are you today?
Hey, what's happening, Talisa?
I am so happy to have you on as a guest. Thank you so much for coming on to Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast. I sincerely appreciate it. Podcast family, check it out. Now, I know I always say that, I have a great guest and this is going to be really good, but I have to say it again. I have a great guest and this is going to be really good. Today we have Ms Marjon on here. Ms Marjon is a wonderful person. She has a beautiful spirit. She wears many hats. And I have to tell you, I personally know Ms Marjon. I've met her like over a decade ago through a mutual friend. And I tell you what, she's an engineer, but she's the most outgoing engineer I've ever met in my life. In addition to engineering, she also does PR. And Marjon, I mean, she's done more than PR. I mean, she wears a lot of different hats and she has just been a blessing to many people. She's helped many people. And so to have her to come onto the show and share her experience about caregiving, it means a lot to me. So thank you, Miss Marjon.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So podcast family, today the topic is romantic caregiving, the emotional weight no one talks about. Miss Marjon, please tell us about yourself and also tell us about some of the caregiving that you were involved in prior to becoming your boyfriend's caregiver.
All right. Well, thank you again for that introduction, Talisa. Hello, podcast land. Get ready. Put your seatbelts on, because I'm a handful, as Talisa said. I usually tell people when I start, being interviewed or when I start doing my podcasting that I didn't choose this work, it chose me. And that is starting to be my theme, whether it's like Talisa said, I started as an engineer. I was like, okay, I'm going to do engineering and retire and be done with it. But ended up getting into communications and have been going back and forth. And so, with that busy type of multiple hats career, I started kind of being a caregiver. Like I tell people, I didn't choose really to get in communications, especially not for nonprofit criminal justice and social justice work. Um, and started caregiving for my family members. It first started with my grandfather back in 2014, and his was just all of a sudden, it was kind of like my grandmother was sick and he was like her caregiver, and then next thing you know, he became sick and then passed away in like 2014. So I'll take that back. We started caring for him like 2013. and my grandmother too. So then after that, lost him in 2014, and then in 2016, meanwhile my dad, who was a cancer, thriver, survivor, he passed away in 2016. So imagine, we was caregiving for him at the same time while caregiving for my grandfather, and then my grandmother, who at times was bedridden. And so it was like me and my mom, and that was it. And so after my dad passed in 2016, because my grandfather passed in 2014, my grandmother passed during COVID time, which was 2020. And so now it's just me and my mother, because I'm only child and my mother's only child. So imagine caregiving for like all those family members back to back, and sometimes simultaneously. And so it was in my blood. Like I said, I didn't choose it, it chose me. And there's certain things that I learned being a caregiver without signing up to be one. Like for example, looking for independent senior living type of places versus the kind where you need that additional help. Interviewing other caregivers to help you, as we call it, the village, because me and my mother could only do so much. And just imagine, at the time I was working full time, and then one time I went back and got my master's. My mother was doing stuff at the church, so life still continues on even as you're a caregiver. So it was just something. After a while I was like, okay, I'm good now. I'm done. Unfortunately, I've lost 3 family members and got a chance to take a break, if that makes sense. So, and then of course, as of about a year ago, met George, my boyfriend, and then this whole cycle started all over again, but on a different level. Like you said, romantically, a romantic level. It's different when you're caring for your daddy versus you caring
Right.
for your man.
Right. Absolutely. So, after experiencing loss of three family members, how did you feel?
I have to be honest, I'm a little unconventional, no, than most. Um, First of all, doing engineer one side and then doing communications another. But and I'm gonna take off my glasses so I can see y'all. Just be keeping it real. And it just, it just got to a point of where you just kind of got in where you fit in. My mom would do certain things. We had schedules. Like I said, we had church, other people like hired caregivers to help us, and then we had church members coming in to help us too. And then, like I said, met my boyfriend, and like I said, this happened a whole nother kind of way. It was a lot. It weighed a lot on me. Sometimes you don't realize the weight that it affects you until you sit down. You ever had that experience where you've been working all day, running, 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 and then you sit down to watch TV, and the next thing you know, you can't hardly get up? It
Absolutely.
was it was that kind of feeling.
What were some of the things when you were caring for your family members that, you did that helped you?
Um, well, first of all, being an engineer, even though I'm not, like you said, I'm a more sociable kind of engineer. Because when you think of engineer, you think of somebody that's kind of introverted to themselves, whatever, a brainiac. But I use some of my transferable skills. I'm very organized, and I'm very good at not only organization, project management, strategic planning. So I started having family meetings and using what I used in corporate America into my personal life. So I would get at the time, my grandfather, my grandmother, and my father and mother together at my grandparents' house, and we would have family meetings. And one of the discussions we had was something I'll never forget, that really everybody was looking at me like I was crazy. And I basically went around the room and asked them, first of all, if you were to pass away, how do you want to go? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Do you want a viewing? And they looked at me like, why are you talking about this right now? And I'm like, because I don't want to be trying to figure out the ninth hour. And it really helped, because some stuff is sudden. Some stuff you do have time to plan, but you still never can quite plan the way you want to. So I knew my grandparents wanted the traditional viewing and be buried at a cemetery. My parents want to be viewed but cremated. So my dad, that's what we did for him. And even moving forward with George, I had the conversation with him, and he wanted to be cremated. He even said, I don't want nobody, looking at me, especially if I'm sick. And I told him, I feel the same way like you, boo. I want to be cremated. In fact, you can wear me around your neck. And I made it a very engaging conversation. It wasn't like, hey, you're sick. Let's have how you want to die. No, it was like, you ever thought about how you want to die? Like a matter of fact type of conversation. So that was something we did, with family members. And then also, do you want to what do you want us to do with this house? Like my grandparents' house. How do you want us to keep it? Do you mind if we sell it? Is there anything you want us to keep of yours, or anything that is in a safe deposit box we don't know about, or is there anything, that those kind of conversations?
Those kind of conversations are very important. Thinking about my own personal experience, it was always a difficult conversation to have with my mother. She did not like talking about it. And I was constantly like, Mom, you have to tell me if something happens. What are your wishes? What do you want? How do you want things to be?
Right,
What I've come to learn with many people that I've been speaking to, that's a very uncomfortable topic to have. But to
right,
your point, it's one that's needed, and perhaps doing it in an engaging way
right.
is something that could bring peace and
Absolutely.
it could help others. So, podcast family, please adhere to just some of the information
Right.
that Ms Marjon just shared, because that's actually a really good way. I never thought about it that way. Mine was more like, hey, if something happens, what do you want? What are your wishes? But maybe
Right.
creating a more of an engaging type of conversation centered around that.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, you got to keep in mind, well, with my family meetings, it wasn't the only thing we talked about. It was one of the action items. So it wasn't so like, what do you want to do if you die? No, it was like, okay, today we're going to talk about vacations. We're going to talk about church stuff. We're going to talk about, family care. Okay, do you want to be at a nursing home? Do you want to stay at home? How do you feel about property? It was like an action item on the agenda. And so therefore it was almost like once we finished that, and then also another thing, we what I would do to be creative is like getting to know each other, because you'll be surprised how you'll have family members, and this goes for everybody, and you will not know the heck about nothing that's going on with your family. You won't know what their favorite color is. You don't know hell what, you barely can remember their birth dates as it is. You don't know what kind of food they like. I mean, it's a whole bunch of stuff. And then one of the things I remember in one of the family members we have, and I'll never forget it, my dad, I asked him one day, what's something that you regret or you want to, do? Because I knew that he was getting sick. And he was like, find my mother's grave. So that's something, because you got to keep in mind she was located in one of those Detroit cemeteries that they don't keep up. We're gonna leave that alone. That's a whole nother podcast episode. And so me and him and my cousins all went out there. Unfortunately, we couldn't find her. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised she's on top, underneath, or whatever, somebody else. But at least we tried. And then also, I learned during one of these icebreaker sessions, family meeting sessions, that he really kind of hate that it was certain things he didn't do as a teenager, and certain things like going to a certain school or not listening to his heart. And I told him, Dad, it's okay, but it was closure, I feel, on his end. And also it helped me in my mind write his obituary. That was another thing. Who has time when you lose a family member? Who the hell has time to be trying to figure out what a middle school, what high school your family went to, and where they worked, and how, when they got baptized, all this stuff you see in the body of an obituary? Who has time to be doing that when you grieving? So it's good to start doing a draft during a family meeting, and besides knowing how they want to go and all the other stuff.
That's awesome. You know what? That's awesome. And I love how you had that structured in
Mm.
terms of action items and different topics to discuss each family meeting. Podcast family, that's some great information right there.
Oh yeah, you haven't seen nothing yet, podcast land, Talisa. I have some templates out of this world. I got medical forms. I don't play around. My thing is, if you can't breathe, who has time to be asking me what my blood type is, what medication I'm on? I just give you this doggone form. I'm gonna give you the form, and I'm gonna be like, hey, here's the form. whatever. I don't have time to tell you where my pharmacy is. I don't have time to tell you who's my primary physician. It's on my medical form, and I have it also in my Google Drive. And my mother has a copy because once again, there's times that she can't remember stuff, and she don't know all the medications and the vitamins I'm on. So, and I did it for George too, and I had it for my family members because once again with COVID, and we learned this the hard way, to Lisa and everybody, you couldn't go back in the back with your family members. So guess what? My mother got sick during COVID. I had to send that medical form back with her because I couldn't go back there until eventually I got suited up and was able to go back because she had had a stroke. So yeah, yeah.
Wow,
So
wow, wow, wow. Okay. That's some great information for just the podcast family to adhere to and
mhm,
walk away with. Because why not?
absolutely
And that's something that's pretty easy to do. I mean,
right.
create a template, create a Google Doc, or some people feel more comfortable with Microsoft Office, just a Word document, and just, have it available, email it to yourself or email it to your loved ones so that, they'll have that information if and when needed. So that's great.
Exactly. Absolutely. Prep is important. Preparation, not like you're preparing for somebody to die, but right now. And if whoever's listening or watching, I'm telling you, start now because and trust me, it's easier to do when everybody's kind of in their right mind and somewhat healthy. It's easier to have that conversation of, so how do you want to go? Or, by the way, how many bank accounts do you have? By the way, are you, what's going on with your income? Where, I mean, you'd be surprised family members have no clue what the hell is going on with each other. And they'll say they're close. Oh, we're very close. Well, are you on your mother or father's bank account? Are they on yours? I mean, what happens when all of this takes place? And unfortunately, that's why you see a lot of people popping up with these GoFundMe things. And it's like, because nobody planned and nobody took out a life insurance policy and nobody knows, like you said, nobody wants to talk about it, but talk about it now. So when they are going through, let's say, chemo or dialysis or whatever, like my dad, oh my gosh, you spend more time doing all that. Who has time to be trying to figure out what bank has got this? And then when you're dealing with other stuff like pensions and all that other, or 401ks, oh my goodness, so come on now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, changing gears a bit, would like to talk about your boyfriend George. Tell me, how did you meet, and tell me the story.
Right. George, I had been knowing him for almost 10 years, but I knew him because we was in a community choir together. And the thing is, I kind of had a crush on him back in the day, but it was one of the things. I gave him my business card and it just kind of, I guess, went in his wallet and that's where it stayed. And I just kind of just was like, my thing is, I'm not going to chase no man, no dude. And so as time went on, I noticed that he slipped, as they say, the young people say, he slipped in my DMs and was like, you look nice today and all this. I'm like, okay, all right, where you been? And then I noticed, I thought maybe he had a girlfriend. I think at the time, in between him slipping in my DMs, he did have a fiance, and I guess it didn't work out. So then he started taking notice of me. And I'm telling you, y'all, by that time, we're talking about years had went by. And I was just like, okay, where you been? Okay, all right, let's see. And then finally, I just said, hey, let's go meet for karaoke because I knew we both had that in common as far as singing. And I'll never forget, we went to Bar 7, here in Metro Detroit area, a bar that has karaoke nights. And that was it. We was hooked. It was a beautiful thing. And I'm telling you all, the thing is, I was one of these type of people, workaholic, single, more so than I rarely dated. I just was like, not feeling the relationship thing because I was just like, I don't want to be let down. You know what I mean? I'm good. And I'm just so glad I opened my heart. We got a chance to probably spend 5 or 6 months before all of a sudden he had a seizure. And then from there, we found out he had a tumor, and still we were just kind of like out of it, like, okay, trying to process stuff. And then later found out it was a brain cancer. And then literally had maybe 8 to 9 months dealing with that. And then he passed this past March, of 2025. So
Yes, my sincerest condolences to you. Yes, and his family. Tell me about the seizure. Were you there when the seizure happened?
let me tell you, he was on his way to come see me here at my place. And it was like one of those type of things where it was taking him forever. And we had been dating, I mean, by this time, a couple of months. So I was like, he's not trying to ghost me. I was having some negative thoughts like, okay, what's going on? Then when I finally reached him, he sounded very out of it. He was talking kind of off in left field. And I'm saying to myself, I don't think he's drunk because he wasn't really a drinker. So I noticed then his speech was slurred, and I said, "Look, George, just get to the nearest gas station and call me." And next thing I know, I didn't hear from him for hours, and I was just on my knees praying and crying. And finally, I called him, and he picked up. And I said, "Are you at a gas station?" He was like, "Yeah." I said, "Go inside right now. Go inside." And he went inside. I could hear the people in the gas station. I said, "Give your." He was like, "Where am I?" And I'm like, "Dude, just give your phone to the attendant or the the cash register person." And he did. And the guy got on the phone. I said, "Look, sir, I don't know what's going on with my boyfriend. I don't know if he's having a stroke. I don't know, but where are you located?" And he told me. And thank God it was only like 15 to 20 minutes away from where I live, because Georgia told me he was in um he's like, "I think I'm in Flint." I'm like, "Dude, you might be, because it's been that doggone long."
Right.
And I was just nervous. I'm thinking like Flint is a heck of a ride. I can't get to him. So I was really relieved that he was only like 15, 20 minutes away. So when I got to the gas station, me and my mother were together because I had already started strategizing in my head, planning stuff like, as soon as I get to him, I'm going to take the driver's side and let my mother trail me. And I'm telling you, he got out the car. He walked. He's like, "I'm fine. I'm just really, really tired." I said, "No, George, get in the passenger seat. Give me the key, and we're about to go." He's like, "Go where?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I got it. You trust me, right?" He's like, "I do." And we went to the ER of Henry Ford West Bloomfield. And when we got to the ER, um, they took him in the back, and I'm telling you, we talked, and he told me he was nervous and a little scared. I said, "Don't, it's all right. I'm here with you." And literally, I promise you, within 15 minutes, he had a full blown seizure right there in the ER room. And it scared the mess out of me because I had never witnessed that before. Where, I mean, it took 8 people because he was just shaking so much in the bed, and all, and then they were all, and then the nurse, when she was in the room, when he was getting ready to, because his eyes rolled in the back of his head, she took off running. And I'm thinking, it's just like in an airplane. If you see the stewardess running, you're gonna get nervous because you're looking at them, make sure, are
Right,
you
right.
good?
I probably
And
done too. Uh-huh.
I ran out screaming like that was really gonna do anything, but that's all I knew to do at the time. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I'm being very honest and transparent. I kind of was like, he's gone. I've lost him. I don't. Okay, what's my boyfriend's gone? But they explained to me what it was and this and that, and they got him back on track, if that makes sense, and his vitals stable and all that, and then he just literally went into a deep sleep, because I guess after a seizure, a lot of times people they get really tired, and that's another thing. I'm learning stuff as it's happening. So yeah, quite a very experience to go through, scary experience to go through, especially when you never experienced it before, or not used to it.
Thank God that you were there and you were able to get him to the hospital and he had that seizure in a place where everyone could see to him, the doctors, the nurses, the staff.
Mm.
Wow. Okay. So then how long did he stay in the hospital after that?
I'm gonna tell you, it's a blur, because it got to the point, I think I counted, like he went from the time that happened, that was like May of 2024. So imagine, it happened May 20 of 20, I mean May 2024. Yeah, 2024, sorry, last year. um, up till he passed in March, he was in the hospital at least 5 times. And I would say out of those times, I was the one that took him. One time, I think his daughter took him, and so maybe it was 6. But but I was, even my strategy was the same. It was always the same hospital, because my thing is, I'm not going to take you to different hospitals and next thing you know, your charts are all over the doggone place. It's bad enough to go to the same hospital and they ask you the same doggone questions, which is crazy. That's why, once again, I did a form for him, a medical form, because it was insane, y'all. How, and at least I don't know if you experienced this with your mother, how they're asking somebody who's brain cancer, talking crazy. Excuse me, sir. What medication are? I looked at the document. I was like, "Are you serious?" Or whoever was registering him. It's insane. Some of the things they're asking these people as they're just totally out of their mind, and I just was blown away. I was like, "Here's his form," and they were like, one of the doctors was like, "What do you do for a living?" And I told him, he was like, "I have never seen anything like this. I wish everybody did this." He was like, "You got to at least represent 2% of the population doing this," because it literally had everything on there, because I was able to go into his my chart. You know, all these hospitals have these portals, y'all. And I went through his history. So I had history, because they were like, "Is this the first time he's had a seizure?" I was like, "No, he's been suffering from seizures since he was 20." That was something else I learned. And then going and getting in contact with his family members. Let me tell you, y'all, it was a life experience, life lesson experience, dealing with a romantic partner versus your family member. Your family member, you kind of got the dibs on everything because that's your family. But when it's your boyfriend, you only have so much access to certain things. Like, I only knew what George had told me, and I didn't know, he didn't tell me anything. There were signs, yeah, like his teeth weren't the best. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this ain't no matter of you just didn't brush today. Something is going on, and you're choosing to ignore it because maybe you're scared. Then I found out, like I said, later from his daughter, who I happened to meet for the first time when he had this episode in the hospital, that he had had seizures when he was younger, but it had been almost 20 years since he had had a seizure, supposedly. You know, the things you learn.
Right, right, right. And it's just so amazing that you were able to just step in and take that information and just begin to create a template for him to help
Absolutely.
for doctors. I mean, like that. I don't think I've ever heard anyone, at least thus far, talk about that or even suggest that. So that's good. I don't think I even have that. So I'm going to make sure that I, create a template and also, have a template for my loved ones because to your point, you're right. And it's I remember going through some things with my mom with her cancer and going with her to the doctor and they would ask her questions and I didn't feel like they were doing a good job. So now I'm engaging with them and my
Right.
mom's looking at me and she would call me my
Mm-hmm.
mom would call me her little tiger. She said
Mm-hmm.
she would be like, "Okay, little tiger." And that was always a cue for me since I was a small child, calm it down. But, I was becoming upset. But, I dealt with them professionally, of course. But, because to your point, they were asking her questions and things that at that stage she was having a hard time remembering. And it just,
Absolutely.
so yeah, I completely understand. Okay, so
Right.
after he had a seizure and he was out of the hospital, you continued on with your relationship. I remember that you were because you're on a radio station as well, and you had a segment on the radio station where you would do music,
Right.
and George was also a part of that.
Oh, he was my co-host. Yeah. And that was therapeutic for him. And I'm gonna tell you something else, y'all. Just a little, lessons learned. When your loved one is diagnosed with whatever, there's no excuse now. We got AI, tools galore. You got to do the research. And I know a lot of times the hospital provides it in the portals and all that, but you got to do your own research, because I'm telling you, you if you slow, like you said, you solely rely on the hospital, you're going to be frustrated like you were with your mom, and there are going to be times you're not going to be at the hospital and they're going to still be asking them questions. I found that it was one time I walked in and a doctor was asking George all these questions. I'm like, he's half out of it. What are you doing? So, You're right. I That was our therapy. That was our ministry, doing radio together. And since we're talking about romantic relationships, I'm telling you, yeah, we say romantic, but when you're caregiving, sometimes that's the last thing on your mind is touchy feely stuff. And I'll keep it PG-13 because there was times we barely was kissing because I just was like, it just was not there. I I'm telling you, I totally learned. He taught me so much, George, and I thank God for him because I learned that you don't have to have sex in a relationship. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I just can't be in a relationship unless there's some sex involved. But you'd be surprised when you turn into a caregiver um, role in a romantic relationship. Yeah, that's the last thing sometimes on your mind because if they're out of their mind, I mean, there was times where this, unfortunately, this last time I knew something was not right. I was at work and I called him and he was just out of it. And I said, okay, after work, I'm gonna go check on him. I called his daughter. She was at work. She couldn't leave. And after I left, I knocked on his door. He couldn't, he was just talking and just jibber jabber talk. And so I went down to the front desk. Now, also, let me back up. It was a time he was in a regular apartment. I told his family, of course, I couldn't get them together for a family meeting, but I just kind of told them through text group. I formed a group with his family, a text group. His lease is about to come up. I mean, what are we gonna do? And they were just like, oh, we'll find something. Well, time went on, and I gave it like a couple of weeks. I mean, a couple of months, nothing. And so finally, we all, I said, look, let's start looking at some places. And I'm already in my head because of caregiving for my grandmother, grandfather, and father. I already had a Rolodex of places in mind. And that's another thing. You got to start doing stuff like that. Maybe visiting some of these senior living facilities and all this other stuff. And I had a couple in my mind I felt were perfect for him. In fact, we went and visited one and everything. And at the time, George was able to get around and he loved it. And I was like, well, this is where you're going to be. And they all were looking at me like, yeah, this is nice, but how in the what is he going to afford this? And I'm like, I don't think you understand. I don't think we got it. I don't know, but it's going to happen. I got faith the size of mustard seed. And so that's where he was, like literally 5 months before he passed. And so it's just one of those things where you're trying to give the person the best quality of life, if that makes sense. Meanwhile, you trying to live your best life. Because let's just be real. I know offline we talked about Talisa stats, but let's just be real. I don't, we can look them up, but a lot of times the caregiver ends up in worse condition than the person they're caring for. And I've seen it where the caregiver goes before the person they're caring for. I've seen that happen. That happened with my grandfather. Okay.
Facts. Yeah.
And my grandmother had a stroke, but was kind of in and out of the bed and doing her thing, ringing the bell and having to change her diaper. And then my grandfather just got up on out of here. And I'm telling you, that's why you got to self care while caring for others. Okay. But like I said, George, it was mainly, the radio thing was his thing. And that's why I said you got to get to know your person you're caring for. What do they like to do? Don't assume that everybody wants to sit and just watch TV all day. So, yeah, we would do radio together, and I'm telling you, I know it helped prolong his life, but also where I found the place for him to live, that helped out tremendously because it was a senior facility, so they would do wellness checks. Like I had them go check on him while I was at work, and they couldn't get him to open the door. That's when I knew, oh, I got to go by there. And unfortunately, they won't go inside unless you're there with them, and that's what happened when they opened the door. He was on the floor, he was conscious, but he was just out of it like this. And I, unfortunately, it wouldn't help me get him in the wheelchair. They provided a wheelchair. By the grace of God, got him in a wheelchair and got him to the hospital. And then unfortunately, like a week later, he passed. Week and a half later, he passed. But, you know, hey, I did my best.
You did, and I mean, you were there. You were definitely there. Going back to when you all were when he was your co-host on the radio, and you would play certain. Do they say records? I know I still say records, but I actually play records still on wax.
Yeah, we
Records.
we do it all. Records, now even MP3s, like digital files, or we had it. It was more digital, and that was another thing. I would make him feel like he was the host, producer, and it was times he just was there in front of the mic. But and it was I'm gonna tell you, I witnessed him being on it to where he was struggling with his words, and his thoughts. And another thing, last night I was watching, Bruce Willis, his wife. My heart goes out to her, and I thought about how you see them one minute they're good and next minute they're not, and I feel for her because one minute I guess he's able to remember stuff because he has dementia, one minute he's out of it, and that's kind of like what was going on with George. There was days where he was glowing, looking good, and other days he just the weight, he was losing a lot of weight, he was sick, dizzy, and you still got to put on your face cuz they're looking at you. You know what I mean? And there was times, but I said the radio thing was the thing that kept us both going because I don't care how sick he was going to be at that radio station with me on Sundays.
That's awesome. Did he have any favorite songs? Did you all have any special moments?
Oh yeah, cuz because of copyright, you know, situations we couldn't, videotape in the radio station and all that. But we had certain songs like Voodoo by Teddy P and Glow by Rick James. And he had a music directory that was out of this world. And that was another thing. That's why I said, you the music director. And he was like, yeah, but and it would be so funny because even it got to the point of where there he loved church. He was, he loved God, but it was times where he was like, I don't really want to go to church, and I'm okay with. I said, I'm okay with that. Are you okay? I'm okay. And he'd be like, but I said, well, you know what? Since you don't want to go to church, you don't have to go to the radio station. Oh, I'm going to that radio station. And at one point, I'm looking at myself, well, who gonna get you there? I got to go pick you up after my church service. So you learn how to adjust, Talisa. You do. You learn how to adjust, but also you learn how to adjust in a healthy kind of way. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I know you know where I'm going because we talked about this offline. I'm big on therapy. I did not. I had weight loss surgery around the time that George had his seizure. You know what I mean? Like a month before. And I'm so glad I kept my life coach slash therapist because you better believe, and I tell anybody that's listening or watching, therapy is so needed. And don't think just because, okay, whatever I'm going through is over with. No, I still have therapy to this day, even after being like a year and a half into weight loss, whatever, my weight loss journey. Weight, and I'm telling you, it's helped because even when George passed, I needed the therapy. It's almost going on 6 months, that he's been gone. I had my therapy session today. It helps.
That's
It
great that
helps.
you mentioned that. Podcast family, I am a huge advocate for therapy. There will come a point in the majority of people's lives where you will experience life, and with that, you'll need help processing it, whether it's stress on the job or a situation with one of your relationships, or you're dealing with someone's physical health. There comes a point in time where, being able to talk to a therapist to help guide you through and provide you with the tools is incredibly beneficial. I still have my therapist, and matter of fact, I had to talk with my therapist regarding a traumatic experience that I experienced earlier this year at no fault of mine, but something that affected me that happened to someone else. Just being able to reach out and talk and to be able to help process things is very helpful. Very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest, I love the fact that I had my therapist before I started dating George. Not before I met him, but before I started dating him, all the way and like I said, almost 6 months past his death, because some days I'm good and some days I'm not. And you have people who are in denial, and I'm just one of those people that I'm like, I want to identify that. I don't want to sit up here and be saying I'm good and I'm really not, and then wonder why when I'm driving I'm about to, run into a tree because I'm so hysterical and about to have an episode, or anxiety or whatever, you know what I mean, or whatever it is, because sometimes stuff can hit you. It's been times where, like when we had his memorial, I thought I was going to be a mess, and I was not. In fact, a lot of people were looking at me like, "You good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." Just. And I'm telling you, it's been times recently where I'm just bawling my eyes out at night because it's not even a song. It's just a thought will come up in my head, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, this is where I would call him, and he probably would console me. He would have said this or something." At one point, even, and I'm sure some of you can attest to this, that like I was concerned about driving past the hospital where he passed because it's like literally around the corner from me, and I'm good. I didn't have no kind of episodes. I've driven past his apartment complex several times, and I have to be honest, it's like a feeling of where I'm just like, I feel like he's somewhere like at his place or at the hospital, and I just haven't been to go see him yet, if that makes sense. And that may be a little unconventional thinking, but it is what it is. And I think I wish people would be more real about caregiving. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, there has been times where I've told people, they're like, "Are you okay? I know you. I'm checking on you." I'm like, I'm a little relieved, and they're like, "Relieved? You're happy they're gone?" I'm like, "No, I'm just glad they're not suffering anymore." And they're like, "Yeah, but don't you miss them?" I'm like, "Absolutely, but caregiving is beep.
Absolutely.
It sucks. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's not always a happy moment, because let's talk about the times when they are mean,
Mhm.
or they are out of their mind, or they say something, that you're like, okay, you start questioning your stability. That's not fun when you don't know what bag that person's coming out of. So heck yeah, there isn't a time or emotion sometimes where you're like,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I would and I think back to it now and I chuckle a bit. I would have personal story. I always wanted to make sure my mother had the best.
right,
So even when it came down to food, so she wanted, for an example, saltine crackers. I didn't just get saltine crackers. I went to the fresh market and I got her the crackers that had flaxseed in them, pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, whole wheat, all of this stuff, expensive crackers, but it would be like that for everything. And I gave it to her. I'm like, here you go, mom, because everything else I would make for her, I would cook from scratch because my mother wanted to do the whole Dr. Sabi thing. So you name it, if she wanted cereal, I made her cereal from scratch. She wanted bread, I made her bread from scratch, butter from scratch, like whatever it was from scratch. So I remember giving it to her and she looked at this and she said, Lisa, all I wanted was a saltine cracker. What is this? I said, but mama, this is the best. I'm like, it has flax seeds and pumpkin seeds and chia seeds. And she
yeah,
looked at me and rolled her eyes so hard.
yeah,
She said, I'm so tired of this foo-foo. She called it foo-foo.
foo foo foo, right,
Right, right.
and
I was just like, I was crushed because I'm like, I'm over
I'm
here,
hearing you.
right, giving you the best of everything.
And you know what? You just touched on something that's so important that people need to keep in mind. Sometimes we overdo it, and we sometimes overdo it to the point where when that person is gone, we regret woulda, coulda, shoulda moments. And I'm here to tell you that one of the things, if I had to say regret, is that I spent so much time doing medical forms and helping his daughter with the medicine schedule, and doing this, and trying to not get too involved with him, that I missed maybe some of the times just spending simple time with him. Like I was so caught up in, okay, you got to eat. I got to go take you to go get something to eat. I got to do this. Okay, I got to take you to the radio station. And he was just like, Marge, can you just sit down, and can we just look at each other? Can we watch TV together? And I'd be like, that's what you want to do? That's all you want to do? And even though I say I regret it a little bit, but I know, like you said, I did my best, because one thing for sure is he lived in a very nice spot in Southfield, a senior living facility. He had the best care. Whenever anything went wrong, we went to the hospitals, West Bloomfield, Henry Ford. He any cancer places we had to go, he always had the best, I know, at least on my end. And then, also his daughter, another thing, at before he got sick, their relationship was a little off. And I would say when he got sick and all that, it was good. And Chantel stepped up to the plate. I have to give her that. Because being a young lady, you're not, there's no script, there's no manual. And in caregiving, y'all. I wish there was, but there isn't. And so there was a lot of times she had to make the executive decision because she was his blood, his next of kin. And she did a great job, at. The best she could. And that's another thing, being okay with your decisions. After a while, if they all they want is a damn saltine cracker, excuse my French, y'all, okay, then that's all they want. And you got to be okay with that. And then when they pass on, you ain't sitting there like, I should have ate them. No, you did, your girl. That fufu was the best fufu that they needed. And we got to be okay with that, Talisa, and stop. Oh, if only I had again. If only I went to the Tigers game with them. If only if I... Let me tell you, I tell people, because I'm going to tell you something. Another thing that pissed me off a little bit was how people come along out of the woodworks when the person is sick and gone. There was a lot of people, and I did a video on this, y'all, that was like, where was his girlfriend, helpful? And I'm saying to myself, who the heck are you to ask that and insinuate that? Where were you when he needed somebody to take him to down on the boulevard to these cancer appointments? And where were you when money was due for bills? You know, that's what gets me. Everybody wants to come and stroke their hand, the famous hand sign, when they're on their deathbed, that picture that you see everybody stroking their hand. But where were you when things needed to be handled, when his rent needed to be paid before his social security disability kicked in? That's why you got to be, that's why therapy, I'm telling you, man, I was ready. I was just like, I know you're not asking that because I got some questions for you too. And and it's sad, but that's what happens. You're gonna have some haters, some naysayers, some
Oh,
ignorant
absolutely.
folks.
That goes a lot. I learned that firsthand. Absolutely.
Yeah, like, and then even asking you stuff as you plan in the memorial, like, why are you doing this? Because I want to, because she wanted it or he wanted it.
Period.
Yeah,
Right.
people are like, you're not gonna, no, no. And that's why it's so important going back to these family meetings, because you'll have people like, they didn't want to have a funeral. No, they want a memorial. They wanted to be cremated. I would, are you going to do, no. I think somebody, are you going to have a part, are you going to pay for it? No, no. And, there were people at the end that came through, helped out, and all and even at the ceremony, people are like, are you going to get up and speak? No, I said my piece. It's time some of you get up and speak. Because in the end, I'm being raw and real. It was me and him sometimes against the world. And that was another thing that was a little hard. I had to learn, let's be real, Talisa, let me
Mhm.
come on in. They
Yep.
say, come on in the room. I had to learn, I need to change my non-negotiables as I move forward in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
my new relationships. There's just certain things that are on my list now that weren't before I met George. Case in point, are you taking care of your health? How are you? What's going on with your health? Forget your FICA score. What the hell is your blood pressure? What's your glucose reading? What kind of pre-existing conditions do you have that you know of? You know,
Absolutely.
you see what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? Now it's beyond just looking a certain kind of way on the outside. What's going on the inside? You know, and I'm telling you, how are you in your family? Are you do you have some kids or ex-wives or crazy ex-girlfriends? Crazy ex-boyfriends? I'm telling you now. I'm just I pull criminal. I pull your record a minute, child.
Yep. Good. You have to. I mean, it's just the world we live in. I mean, you really have to. Going back to something that you said that I really resonated with, and I wanted to just expound upon that, is the point where you stated you're a caregiver and you get so caught up in being a caregiver that you can forget to do the simple things, which is to sit down and watch a movie. And
Right.
podcast family, that's so incredibly important because even from personal experience, I resonate with that. You can get so caught up in being a caregiver because there's so much that needs to be done and trying to stay on top of everything. Because I tried to stay on top of everything. I was averaging, you all know my story by now. I was averaging 2 hours of sleep a night.
Mm.
My mom had a nurse, we had a CNA. I was still cooking for her. I was having a house built for her as a gift. Like all it just, it was just a lot. And the only person, well, my loved ones here in Myrtle, they knew what was going on. However, like professionally, my manager was the only one that knew what was going on. And living in a state where you don't have family or your closest friends for over decades, it can be really challenging. But that pushed me even more so to be on top of my game. But within that, you have to find time for yourself and you have to find time for your loved ones to do the simple things, which is sit down and watch a movie. My mother had a favorite, it was an old school black and white movie. I want to say this movie had to have been maybe from like the 30s or the 40s. And the day that she passed, I remember that morning I was thinking about it. I'm just like, I'm going to go to this sandwich shop and get her this sandwich, and I just plan to watch a movie with her, to just sit and watch a movie with my mother. But that would be the day that she passed away. So I didn't have an
Mm.
opportunity to do that.
Right. And just to piggyback off that, I had to learn self care is different for everybody. What you might want to do is something I might not want to do. And you got to listen to your body and your heart. You can't sit up here and say, I'm self caring because I go get my nails and hair done. But then, like you said, you only getting 2 hours of sleep. Or I'm self caring because I get a massage every blue moon. And meanwhile, you barely can get out the bed. It's sometimes the self care is beyond shelling out any money. It's sometimes just journaling. It's meditating. Depending on what your religious beliefs are. It's listening to a certain devotional or reading certain things to get you ready for just before you wake up. And when you're getting ready to lay down. I'm starting to walk now. My not only my therapist but my weight loss surgeon suggested it. And at first I was just like, well, I got a gym membership, what the hell I want to be walking. Man, let me tell you, it is so, I look at where I live totally different now, and I actually enjoy it. In fact, I do it 3 times a day, and I'm telling you, I'm able to clear some things, and it didn't cost me anything, y'all. But I still keep my gym membership, but the thing is, it's like I'm learning how to do things that I want to do. That's another thing. Sometimes we do self care based on what other people want us to do or what other people are doing. You got to listen to your heart and your body. You got to listen to yourself and everything. That's why it's self care, not, you know, Leroy care or Keisha care or Ray care.
Absolutely.
Gotta do shout out to Ray.
Shout out,
You
Ray.
see what I'm saying? Yeah, you gotta do what fits for you. Like,
Mhm.
and you gotta be careful. People will love to tell you what you need to be doing. Like when George passed, there were people like, you need to do this and you need to do, and I was just like, who are you to tell me what I need to do or how I need to feel? You know? And I even had somebody tell me, maybe you shouldn't be looking to date again. So because it hasn't been a year yet. Now, yeah, exactly. And I think they kind of look out of their mind. So we got. I kind of took that with a grain of salt.
So how did
But
you,
you be
wait. So how did you handle that one?
Well, I do know that they got some mental issues, so I kind of gave them a pass, but it still was said, you know what I mean?
Right.
And the thing is, I just kind of told them, I said, well, I'm just going to pray about it. And when God feels the need is time, it's time. And I'm going to tell you, in a way, I would say I did go out on a date, two dates after, probably about a couple of months after George passed. And I'm glad I did because I, once again, was able to go back to that non negotiable list and negotiable list and kind of switch some stuff. I mean, you don't know. It's just like you don't know till you try it on, right? Sometimes you got to try it. You can't just go off of what you see on these online. You got to go into the store and actually put on the shirt and everything. And another thing, going back to self care, Talisa, it's just like the airlines. Sometimes, not sometimes, you have to put on your mask first before you go try to put on everybody else's. So I just want to give that little analogy. But yeah, I've learned, I'm doing what's best for me, Ms Marjon, and it is working. Each day is different. Some days I'm good, some days I'm not. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay. You're gonna cry sometimes. I had people like, you don't seem like you're really great. I'm good, thank you. It's insane. That's why the world is so crazy now because we got so many people telling us how we should be and act
Instead of
and
focusing on
feel.
themselves. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And then it's also sad that people don't have nowhere to go to talk about things like this. So I commend you for having this podcast because there's so many subtopics within caregiving. Like you said, romantic caregiving is different than caring for a family member. And I also thank God that I had my mother to kind of help me stay on the straight and narrow. Because see, my mother was married to my father for almost 40 years. So there was times my mother was like, whoa, 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 you're not married to George. He's a good guy, but you're not married. So you got to kind of pump the brakes on some things. Because I was starting to get into that wifey role and it's up without even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, look, let Chantel handle some stuff because that's his daughter. Now and then also you're the girlfriend. It's a difference. Because like prime example, my mom, it was times I would be there almost at the hospital till 8 or 9. My mom was like, "It's okay to come home. You ain't got to spend the night."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's some wisdom there.
let me tell you, y'all, it's okay because there are people who are beating themselves for not doing something. And the sad thing about it is that person has went on home to glory, as the elders say, or with the elders or whatever, and we're still beating ourselves up for not, like you said, the saltine cracker thing, or wish I had a, took them to Belle Isle. I wish I had a, took them to Hawaii. I hear it all the time, and I know in a way I've become an advocate for caregivers. You know what I'm saying? And it's not the first time I've talked about this subject, and it's like I feel like I'm almost a subject matter expert in it because of the experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of your relationship when he was going through everything, you said that you really put on the hat of the caregiver and became really like focused on that aspect. The last question that I have for you is, were you still able within that experience to still have some, just intricate romantic time together?
It's funny you say that because it was a time, and I can't remember exactly when, maybe a couple of months before he passed, that I had got to a point. We was in the parking lot in my vehicle, and because by this time he couldn't drive because his sight was off, and he still could see, but it was just blurry. Let him tell it he was fine, but it was times he was almost walking in the walls and stuff, and or whatever, and it just got to the point of where I'm gonna tell you all the business. Ex girlfriends started coming out, friends that were women were coming out the woodworks, and it just got to a point of where I just had it. He wasn't cheating. I want to be clear, he wasn't cheating. It was just that you'll be surprised when people are sick or going or things are seeming like it's not good. That's when I said the old folks said the devil was busy, and I just told him, look, you know what? Maybe we just need to be friends. And you should have seen his face. He was like, I understand whatever you want to do. I understand I know this is hard for you. I know you don't want to be with me, and I get it. I get it. It's all right. I'm fine with that. I don't want to bother you or be a burden. And I immediately Said, you know what, George? My bad. And he said, what? I said, you know what? We gonna ride this out till the wheels fall off.
Oh,
How's that sound?
okay.
And he was like, I like that. I says, we gonna do this together. He was like, yeah. And that was how we went out. And I'm so glad because I'm telling you, I got we all get there where you just get to the point where you like, I'm done. I don't have no more left. I'm running, I'm beyond running on fumes. I can't do this no more. I'm about to just fall out. And I kind of did that. I threw up my hands. I'm like, I this ain't working. And he was like, just, and I'm thinking, I'm expecting him to act a certain way, but when I saw his face, like a little kid in the candy store that couldn't get no candy, I said, you know what? You know what? I was built for this. You know, God wouldn't put more on me than I could bear. We're gonna ride it out, and that's exactly what we did. That's why so many people, and it brought tears to my eyes, will come up to you and said, he loved you. He even said, if I could, I'd marry you right now. But I was like, oh, no, about that. Okay, no, we ain't gonna do it. No, 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 you got too much going on, and I was just being real. But I just thank God that, I've talked to other people who have caregived for people, and their loved one was trying to propose to them before they had one foot in the grave and one foot on the ground, and they was trying to propose to him. I'm glad George didn't put me in that situation. I think he knew, but he knew that I was there. You know, I know there was times he was probably frustrated with me because I was just working, but I'm like, this job is helping to pay for stuff, so can't get too pissed off. And I once again I learned that you got to have a village. You can't do it by yourself. And I'm not talking about one or two people. Sometimes you're gonna have to call on friends and buddies and high school buddies and ex girlfriends. I had his ex girlfriend helping with stuff sometimes, even though And you start to learn some people are all talk, you know. And that's why at the end I'm like, you can say what you want. I know I was there.
Right.
The proof, I got receipts. What y'all got?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You I remember reading something. I was either reading something or looking at one of your videos, and it was very touching. I would love for you to share it with the podcast family. You talked about how you went into his hospital room. This was the last, well, either one of the last times you were seeing him, but this was towards the end. And how like you anointed his hands and his feet, and I'll let
Mm-hmm.
you tell the story.
Yeah, it was like the week that he transitioned out. And once again, because I had that caregiver experience, and it reminded me of my dad, which was hard because it was like it wasn't sudden. It was like this week long. And that's why we kind of left it up to people. If you want to come and see him, he's transitioning out of here. This is the time to do it. All that BS, you need to leave it out. You need to leave it. You ain't got time to complain about where he's at, and you ain't got this. If you want to see him, this is the time. And I'm so glad I had my time with him, and I used that time to wash his hands, wash his face. I had some holy oil, and I, put it on him, and I prayed over him. We did a little impromptu radio show. He was in and out. His eyes would open sometimes, they would close, and I just talked to him like as if we was in a radio station together. And I'm just so thankful that this old neighbor of his came in, and that was kind of my way of like saying, okay, George, now I'm gonna let somebody else spend some time with you. And that was the last time I saw him. And I'm so glad and at peace with that, because some people I noticed are like, oh, I was there when they took their last breath. Oh, I went to go see them when they did pass. I didn't want to remember him or see him that kind of way. And even at his memorial, he was cremated. We didn't even have him there. His daughter has his ashes. It was just, we were just at the church. There was no pictures of him, nothing. Because I let Chantel kind of plan it and whatnot. And I'm so at peace with it. No regrets. No regrets. And I'm so glad I had that time with him, because it was just times where I felt like he was smiling. And I'm like, I told him in his ear, I said, if you want to leave out of here, I'm okay with that. And I love you and thank you so much for being the best boyfriend, you know? And I said my piece. I didn't do this well. What is the hospital doing? Are they doing what? Why are you leaving? It was closure, and I went on my way to Lisa, and that's the thing. That's part of going through therapy sessions, talking to the person, having those difficult conversations. So therefore, you're not waiting till the ninth hour to try to figure out why didn't you say you love me? Why didn't you do this? Why did you know? We had already been through all of that. Anything I had problems with our relationship, we had already talked about it, and they were there. Nobody's perfect, but there was times I was like, okay, I don't appreciate how you respond to some of these women on Facebook. He stopped. That was like before he got sick. And that's another thing, nipping stuff in the bud in the beginning versus waiting 20,000 years later to try to talk about, well, well, why did you, when I was like 7 or when we met 10 years ago, why didn't you call me back? Why didn't you had my, he already knew and we had already settled it. And that's why he literally, I can say, lived his best life when we were together. There was stuff he had never did before that, like be on the radio.
Yes.
He had never been to a Lions game ever, but he was a Lions fan. I didn't question it. I got his tickets. Brad Holmes, shout out to Brad Holmes, the general manager of the Lions, is a good friend of mine. His sister is one of my best friends. Got us tickets, and like I said, I got receipts. You see what I'm saying? And that's what a good feeling is when you're a good caregiver, Talisa. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
You got receipts from those crackers.
yeah, that's it. Period. I do. Absolutely do. So, thank you for sharing that. It's a beautiful story and just full of just so much wisdom, knowledge, triumphs, hardships, and
Hmm.
just, sharing even like his personality with us. Thank you so much. Changing gears, because I know you do a lot of things and you have different projects going on. Is there anything that you would like to share?
Oh man, well, you can find me on, that's my grandma said, on that pewter, on that pewter. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, the official Miss Marjon or Ms Marjon. You can find me between the two, y'all. It's Ms Marjon, as you see, and follow me. Follow me. Hey, my link tree. I got a link tree where you can see some of the projects that I've worked on and all that. Definitely follow me on Linktree. It's Miss Marjon. That's the little, extension. And I'm still doing radio. I'm still doing podcasting. I am helping other people. I'm moving on. And here's the thing, this is the takeaway. Do what you love because it's so therapeutic. I still do the radio show. I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, but I did. And the crazy thing, I've had other co-hosts come in. They can't take the place of George, but the thing is, it's like I'm learning to move on and do better. That's why my list of things I want in a mate are different than before I met George, because he taught me so much. He also, one of the things I tell people he taught me how to love myself, how to allow a man to love me. Because when you're not used to dating and like healthy dating, it can get it's a lot of stuff that can get all screwed up. But he taught me it's okay to let a man love you, and love you for you, not a body part. It's okay to sit and watch TV and not be fun, it's okay. It's okay. So, because sometimes we don't allow others to love us when it comes to relationships. And like I say, he taught me how to build a non-negotiable list versus negotiable list. You know, he was not perfect, but neither am I. And I can't wait till I see him again up in heaven. And I know that, I tell people and they kind of look at me crazy when I say this. I'm like, he wasn't my Boaz. He wasn't my husband. You know what I mean? Because if he was supposed to be my husband, he would still be here. And I had to become at peace with that even recently because I used to question God, like, why would you take him and leave all these other knuckleheads here? I'm just being honest. And but I know God doesn't make mistakes. And that's another thing. You got to be firm in whatever it is you believe and be okay with that even. So I love him. I miss you, Georgie, but I know I'm gonna see you one day soon. and that even goes to my family members too. But it really hit hard with George, I guess, because it was just like I never really dated anybody like that before on that level and everything. But I'm so excited about the future, because I know now I need if I'm gonna meet somebody, it's got to be George times 10, if that makes sense. It's
Oh
got to
yeah,
be a
that makes sense. That
it's got to be bigger and better. I can't be going backwards. And trust me, there's been a few that have stepped my way, and I'm like, you not even bringing what George is bringing. So I know I'd be a fool to be even, fool around with you. So
right, absolutely. Podcast family, I'm going to make sure that I list Miss Marjon's information in the description. So please check out her link tree. Please check out her radio station, her podcast. And she also does PR. Like she has a lot of different projects that she's always doing. She's definitely a mover and shaker. So please follow her and stay tuned for everything that's coming up that she has going on. Miss Marjon, thank you so much again for being a guest on Mama Mabel's Caregivers podcast. I sincerely appreciate you, and I know that the podcast family also sincerely appreciates you. Thank
yeah, love you, Talisa.
you. Love you.
Love all of you.
Yes, love you.
Ain't nothing you can do about it. That's what I usually say. I love you, and ain't nothing you can do about it.
Well, that's all right. And podcast family, until next time.